無常人心未妙法百千万苦難遭遇我今見聞徳十字願下如来真実義無常Jinshin, supreme, very deep. Mimyoho, the subtle Dharma. Mujo, Jinshin, Mimyoho, Hyaku Senman, 100,000, 10,000. Hyaku Senman, Ko, eons. Nan Sogu, hard to meet. Ga, me, I, ken, mon, see and hear, toku, am able, juji, to receive and retain. Gan, I vow, ge, to understand, nyurai, the tathagata, the one thus come, or the one who went like that. Nyurai shinjitsu, true and real, gi, intention, meaning. I want to understand the real intention of the Buddha. So I woke up this morning having slept for 7 good hours, which is unusual for me, for whatever reason, with my checkered karma. But I woke up with the idea that I would like to perform a noble act, or I'm called upon to do a noble thing today, if I'm up to the task, which I'm probably not, but in the spirit of seeing what happens, the intention is to clarify the nobility. You see, among the other things, my British would-be elites, the British ignobles, the ignoble people behind the ignoble tension to control the world, which fueled the British Empire, the whole British imperial project. As part of their desire to control everything, these British ignobles have created an artificial scarcity of various things, the most obvious of which is energy, because by controlling energy, you control the food supply, you control lack of growth of economic activity, and by those means you can control the world, or so they think. You can't control the world without really learning first what it means to control oneself, which is a noble undertaking. And that is really the antidote to their ignobility. See, one of the things they've created artificially is a dearth of nobility. My culture, my own conditioning is such that to aspire to nobility is a matter for laughter. It's ridiculous that ordinary people should aspire to nobility. But in fact, that's the whole point of the Arya Satya, the noble truths. We can, irrespective of social standing, high or low, we can all, thanks to the Buddha, aspire to walk the noble path, which is the fourth of the 4 Arya Satya, the 4 noble truths. And the essence of walking this path is cleansing one's own mind, not going out and saving the world on the basis of a deluded, inflated opinion of one's own culture and one's own abilities. The first thing is to cleanse one's own mind. And maybe the last thing is to cleanse one's own mind as well. So the gold mining metaphor is all about that. It's separating our own mind from doṣā, which means faults or harms. First, do no harm in that sense. We protect our mind from the faults. We shake off the harms. We protect our mind from the harms. We shake off the harms with samādhi, by sitting in samādhi. And finally, we finish off the harms. We destroy them through prajñā. So śīla, samādhi, prajñā is the three-way classification of the eightfold noble path. The gold mining metaphor is all about separating the mind from harms and then using it however we like. So there's this possibility of freedom, being free to choose where we go, where we direct our own minds. That freedom comes as a result of the effort of śīla, samādhi, prajñā. Śīla means good practice, good conduct. In Zazen, for example, it means not doing bad conduct. See, bad conduct, number one for me in Zazen would be this kind of stiffening up. And for me, the Alexander technique has been a kind of an antidote to that, a way of re-establishing good practice instead of the bad habit of stiffening up, of trying to do the right thing. As Nellie Ben-Or observed about 25 years ago, she said to me, "For you, up is a poisoned word, isn't it?" And what she meant by that, as soon as I hear the word up, a little bit of a stiffening response comes in. So the antidote to that for me is I send my knees forwards and away. I don't even think about lengthening the spine. I start by forward. Let the head go forward, let the knees go forward, and then let the up do itself. That's good practice. Śīla, good habits, good practice, good conduct, virtue, śīla. In the Eightfold Noble Path, śīla includes using the voice well, using the body well, and earning an honest living, either as by doing some useful job constructively as a lay person, or earning one's crust as a mendicant, a bhikkhu. So śīla, that's three. Śīla, samādhi, prajñā. So three of the eight branches of the Noble Eightfold Path are śīla. And in the verses we're going to go through today from Saundarananda Canto 16, the Buddha describes śīla as a kind of way of a preventive thing of protecting ourselves from harms, as if harms, doṣā, were our enemies. So the first approach is not to let those harms attack one's mind. And so if we have good habits, if we practice good discipline, good practice, then the harms are not inclined to, they don't venture to attack our mind. So that's the first way of separating the mind, protecting the mind from the harms, through śīla. And then samādhi which means putting together, like when water is contained in something. The water and what contains it are put together, and thereby the water stays still. So Asvaghosha uses the metaphor, or the Buddha uses the metaphor in Asvaghosha's verse of still water, like when a river, like the Indus River, a calm, broad river which is still on its surface. Waves on the river are like disturbances of the mind, of the calm mind. And so samadhi is the effort of samadhi is the effort to still the mind, to calm the mind. Which one can't do directly, but we can let it happen, like not creating waves on calm water. So samadhi, also in the verses we're going to do today, compared to a mountain, it casts off the harms. So whether it's a mountain or whether it's water, it's something which remains still, calm, unperturbed, immovable. Well, I wouldn't say water would be immovable, but not moving. Immovable like a mountain that casts off harms, like a mountain casts off the mighty torrents of a Himalayan river. But then, and this is the thing which I didn't understand 15 years ago when I first translated these verses in Saundarananda Canto 16. Prajñā, wisdom, understanding, actually finishes off the harms. I couldn't understand that except in light of emptiness. Because the point of emptiness is that when we understand emptiness through an effort of understanding, we see that the harms don't exist. Neither do they not exist. But the harms are events that happen. And so in that sense, when we understand harms as happenings, not things that are out there, in that sense we finish them off. They lose their power over us in the sense that we need not fear them as extraneous things, but see them as happenings that can be caused not to happen, that can be prevented from happening. If they have happened, they can be let go of. Those are the four kinds of right effort the Buddha spoke of. The effort to prevent harms from happening, the effort to let go of harms that have happened already, the effort to make happen good that hasn't happened yet, and finally the effort to let keep on happening the good that's happened already. So that's what this effort is about. So the good that's happened already is the Buddha has clarified, elucidated the Four Noble Truths. And the task via Asvaghosha's help and Nagarjuna's help is to help people rediscover the nobility of the Eightfold Noble Path. And I'm aware that my audience is primarily people who practice Zazen. So the task is really a reconnecting of the practice of Zazen, which we all love, with the original teaching of the Buddha, to clarify how, in light of emptiness, bhāvana is the means of using wisdom, understanding, like a sword to cut the fetters which prevent us from progressing along the noble path. So Zazen is good practice, śīla, it should be good practice. It's samādhi, it's a method of calming the mind. Ultimately, it's an effort of understanding which allows the mind to be separated in the truest sense from harms, and thereby allows us to think whatever we like, to direct the mind wherever we like. It gives us a freedom. As Master Dogen describes at the end of Fukan Zazengi, the doors to the treasure house swing open and we can enjoy its contents as we like. That the gold mining metaphor is a precursor of those words of Master Dogen, who had that sense of freedom, not being constrained by trying to be right, by trying to get rid of faults that don't exist. The freedom of being steeped in good practice, of understanding and having experienced what samādhi is, especially the samādhi which is king of samādhis, which I think is referred to indirectly in these verses from Saundarananda Canto 16. And then finally, that sense of communing with the wisdom of the ancient sages, so that when we recite these verses talking about prajñā, we have a sense there's no gap. It's like, yep, I understand every word of these verses. I understand what Asvaghosha was saying about prajñā, why he says nihanti doṣān. Prajñā destroys the faults, it destroys the harms. So that's what we're going to study in these 5 verses. So I shall start by saying them in English. I have memorized them in Sanskrit, but so they're in the upajati meter, which is 11 syllables, and reciting verses in the Shikarini meter has helped me recite verses in the upajati meter as well. Once you start getting the hang of what's long and what's short, when you know the meter, then it helps your Sanskrit pronunciation. So the Shikarini meter ends always in dum dum da 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 dum. So let's see in the gold mining metaphor, kramen adbi shudam kanakami iha doṣā vyavahitam. Doṣā, harms, vyavahitam, separated. He's describing the mind separated from harms. Dum dum da 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 dum. Doṣā vyavahitam. In a similar way with these verses in the upajati meter, the last 4 syllables of each pada are dum da dum dum, dum da dum dum, dum da dum dum. So, for example, I'll do the Sanskrit first. Kleśāṅkurān pratanoti śīlaṁ, bījāṅkurān kāla ivātivṛttaḥ, ivātivṛttaḥ, dum da dum dum. So ivātivṛttaḥ means gone. So it's kāla ivātivṛttaḥ means like a gone season. Kleśāṅkurān na pratanoti śīlaṁ, noti śīlaṁ, dum da dum dum. So the śīlaṁ means good conduct, good practice. Na pratanoti does not propagate. Kleśāṅkurān, the shoots of kleśā. So kleśā and doṣā are pretty much used interchangeably. So doṣā we translate it as faults or harms. Kleśā means also afflictions or torments. Basically, I think Asvaghosha uses them interchangeably. They appear also in the gold mining metaphor, which we're coming to gradually. So kleśāṅkurān, accusative plural, the shoots of affliction, the shoots of torment, the shoots of the torments. So śīla, good conduct, no more propagates the shoots of affliction than a bygone spring propagates shoots from seeds. Bījāṅkurān, shoots from seeds. So again, śīla, it's preventative. It stops harms or afflictions from sprouting. Second line. Śucau hi śīle puruṣasya doṣā, manaḥ sa-lajjā iva dharṣayanti. So the harms, doṣā, as long as a man's good conduct is untainted, śucau hi śīle puruṣasya, puruṣasya of a man, śucau, śīle, locative, where śīla is pure, where śīla is untainted. Manaḥ, the mind, accusative. Sa-lajjā means timidly. The faults are like timid. Iva, like dharṣayanti, means venture to attack. So the harms, as long as a man's good conduct is pure, his good practice is untainted, see, not poisoned. See, this made my śīla poisoned, not pure. It was like some agenda to be upright, to be right. It made my good practice tainted, poisoned. But the harms, as long as a man's good conduct is untainted, that's where the Alexander directions are preventive. Knees forwards and away, pulling to the elbows and widening across the upper part of the arms as you widen the back. And let the head go forward and up from there. Head forward and up. So the up is relegated to the end like that. Don't go for it directly, it's indirect. In that way, a man's conduct is prevented from being poisoned. The harms, as long as a man's good conduct is untainted, venture only timidly to attack his mind. Okay? So practicing Zazen with the Alexander technique like that, so letting it happen, letting the sitting happen on that level, it doesn't finish off the harms, but it prevents the harms from attacking us so grossly. Like this is inviting harms. It absolutely was in my experience. Because you become stiff-necked and you try to be right, and it leads to arrogance and thinking you know what the right thing is, and all kinds of ailments go in the wake of that. So Alexander work at the level of śīla is preventative of that. Okay, and then the next verse, that's Saundarananda 1634. Kleśāms tu vishkambayate samādhir vegani vadrir mahato nadinam. But balance, samādhi, casts off vishkambayate, casts off the afflictions, kleśāms, too, but. Okay, so that śīla prevents the afflictions from doing harm to us, but samādhi, balanced stillness, positively casts off the harms, the afflictions. Like a mountain, iva, like adri, a mountain. Vegan means torrents. Mahato, mighty, mighty torrents, accusative plural. Nadinam, of rivers. So the image is like a Himalayan mountain, casting off the torrents of rivers. The harms, so stitam samadauhina dharṣayanti. No, that T isn't long, is it? Stitam samadauhina dharṣayanti doṣā bhujanga iva mantra bhāda. Mantra bhāda. Mantra bhāda. Mantra bhāda means bound by a mantra, spellbound. Okay, so samādhi renders the harms spellbound. Bhujanga iva. Bhuja means going on its belly, so a snake. Iva, like. So doṣā bhujanga iva mantra bhāda. No, it's not bhāda, it's bhāda. So there's something about that ending which suggests that they're kind of the stupor of charmed snakes. Doṣā bhujanga iva mantra bhāda. Again, so the meter adds something to your understanding in that way. So the image of samādhi has rendered the snakes spellbound, rendered the harms spellbound. Stitam samadau, locative, samadau in samādhi. Stitam, staying in. So standing firm in samādhi. Na dharṣayanti. They do not venture to attack. The harms do not attack a man who is standing firm in balanced stillness. Like charmed snakes, they are spellbound. Brilliant metaphor, isn't it? So this is really the essence of Gudo Nishijima Roshi's teaching. He's all about samādhi. This is what he understood in his own practice. What he called the balance of the autonomic nervous system, which was a kind of an unfortunate reduction of samādhi to a state of the autonomic nervous system. But the calmness of the mind, the kind of calmness of the mind that a businessman needs to make important decisions as a bigwig in the Ministry of Finance, as he was, or as an officer in the Imperial Army that he also was. He understood that sitting in full lotus, separated from the end gaining of the world, every morning sitting in front of a wooden pillar as he did. He used to joke that the wooden pillar was his teacher, showing him where it was up. Over the years, he liked to talk about samādhi as being like the stillness at the bottom of the ocean. So you go into work, you get on the train, and everything that happens is like waves. You know, you see that beautiful Japanese girl sitting opposite you on the train, and that's like a wave on the surface of the ocean. But when you go back every day and sit in full lotus in your quiet private room, just on your own, separated from all those harms, there's a calmness that's like going back deep to the bottom of the ocean, that stillness. So Buddha Nishijima Roshi was steeped in that. But I wasn't satisfied with with his teaching in the end. As he complained, I sniffed his teaching, which he didn't like, but there it was, because there was something missing. And here in the third verse in this series, 1635, the Buddha, in Asvaghosa's poem, says exactly what was missing, which was prajñā, understanding, in light of emptiness. Prajñā tvasheshena nihanti doṣās. But to prajñā, wisdom, understanding, asheshena, without a trace, nihanti, destroys, doṣās, the harms. But wisdom destroys the harms without trace. Tira druman pravrishi nimnag eva. Again, it's dum da dum dum. Nimnag eva. So the va is a short syllable, but because it's at the end of the line, it's long. So dum da dum dum. Nimnageva. So nimnageva means like a mountain stream. Nimnaga. Ga means going and nimna means down. So going down means a mountain stream. Nimnageva. So something very dynamic. It's not a kind of a stale intellectual understanding. It's understanding in action, like a mountain stream. Pravrishi means in the monsoon season. Tira druman, tira means bank, and the bank of the stream, the bank of the river. Druman, trees. So like a mountain stream in the monsoon, destroying the trees on its banks. Okay, so what this metaphor is suggesting is it's like getting to the root of harms and uprooting them. And of course, in light of emptiness, which is the thing that Nishijima Roshi did not clearly understand, in light of emptiness, the harms can be uprooted and destroyed. In light of emptiness, what's destroyed is our conception that there are these issues, these problems that I have to sort out, that I have to get rid of the faults. No, the faults don't exist as things to be got rid of in that sense. The faults are empty of their own existence, and that's what can be destroyed. What's destroyed is the prapancha, the spinning them into things, spinning them into self-existence, othering faults as things out there. So that's the kind of irony. In the first, with śīla and samādhi, the faults are kind of othered, as if they're out to get us. They're harms that, like snakes, that might attack us. But with prajñā, with understanding in light of emptiness, the faults can't harm us in that way. In that sense, they can be uprooted and destroyed. You see, without understanding emptiness, this verse didn't make sense to me. Now it does make sense. Dagda yaya na prabhavanti doṣā. Dagda, consumed, burned up. Yaya, instrumental feminine, because prajñā is feminine. Burned up by it. Doṣā, the harms. Harms consumed by it. Na prabhavanti. So bhavanti means happen. Prabhavanti also means happen. But the pra is emphatic. So you can translate prabhavanti as prevail. I've translated stand a chance. Na prabhavanti, they do not prevail. They don't stand a chance. Harms consumed by it do not stand a chance. So harms burned up by understanding, by real wisdom, do not stand a chance. And then here's a pada that I struggled with until I got my head around the meter, which is, it ends with kena vriksha dum da dum dum. Kena vriksha vadragnine vanusritena vriksha. Vriksha means trees. So again, the harms are compared to trees, which can be uprooted and then burned up. In this case, the metaphor is of a thunderbolt. Vajra means a thunderbolt. Agni is fire. Agnina, instrumental, by a fiery thunderbolt. And then iva, like. Then anusritena, this means it's instrumental of anusrita, which means following in the wake. So harms consumed by it do not stand a chance, like trees in the fiery wake of a thunderbolt. Vadragnine vanusritena vriksha, vriksha. Vadragnine vanusritena vriksha. Harms consumed by wisdom do not stand a chance, like trees in the fiery wake of a thunderbolt. So that's the threefold path of śīla, samādhi, prajñā, each described in terms of how we cleanse the mind of faults. That's what the gold mining metaphor is going to be all about. And then, with the mind cleansed of faults, we can calm the mind, samkshipati. We're going to talk about calming the mind, and prerayati, directing the mind wherever we like. But before that, it's shamayati. And shamayati in the hidden meaning means dropping off mind. Okay, that's what previously it's been translated by E.H. Johnson and Linda Colville as calming the mind. Shamayati manaḥ appears in both closing lines of the two verses of the gold mining metaphor in the Shikharini meter. So shamayati manaḥ ostensibly means calming the mind. But in the next talk in this series, I'm going to explain how the deeper meaning of shamayati manaḥ is dropping off the mind in light of emptiness. We drop off the mind in light of emptiness, and on those grounds we can calm the mind. We drop off the mind in light of emptiness, and on those grounds, the mind that's separated from faults, we direct it wherever we like. That's the role of prajñā in the eightfold noble path. Prajñā means seeing straight, samyak drishti, and thinking straight, samyak vitarka. Master Dogen said thinking straight is busting a zafu, wearing out a zafu. So that makes sense to me in light of that what Alexander meant by thinking. And they're also included in prajñā is right initiative. Right initiative is not settling for groupthink, it's figuring it out for yourself. So that was a big lesson, huge lesson for me. When I started off collaborating with Nishijima Roshi on the Soba Genzo translation, it was just me and him. And then suddenly, all these newbie Dharma heirs start appearing and sticking their oar in. And Nishijima Roshi started believing his own publicity. So from it being a kind of just me and him there, figuring it out, excavating the truth of it, this kind of group dynamic of him and his Dharma heirs got in the way. And you see it everywhere. You see it everywhere. In France, it's the same thing. It's the blind leading the blind. People aren't inclined to figure things out for themselves. See, I dodged a bullet. I dodged a bullet when I was 17 or 18, having failed the Oxbridge entry exam. In my leaving interview with the chief master, because I was in the rugby team and so on, he must have liked me. He offered to get me into some Oxbridge college or other. He said he could make a phone call. You know, he was very well connected with Oxbridge colleges, and I didn't have to think twice about it. I said, no thanks. I'd already decided that for whatever reason I wasn't meant to go to Oxford or Cambridge. God knows something guided me to realise that that it wasn't meant to be. My path wasn't to join the club of the British establishment. So even before that, I used to take rugby incredibly seriously, much more seriously than my academic work at school. But sometimes we'd lose, and I'd be so gutted, devastated in the coach on the way back. I started to reflect on it. Why is it so important if we win or lose? We split into two teams, you know, divide and conquer. It's us versus them, and then why am I so devastated spiritually that my team has lost? You know, in what sense is it a failure? And that's what inspired me to give up rugby and take up karate do, which was obviously a more individual kind of path. So I was already, as a result of finding so much truth in playing rugby, compared with the lack of truth in the academic study, especially of economics. I was already guided somehow to, on some level, not go down the clubbable route, to choose the more individual route. But then, ironically, having got to Japan and met Nishijima Roshi, I kind of threw that away and stopped really thinking things for myself to a large extent, because of sort of thinking it was necessary to be an empty cup to receive his teaching. So there was, for many years, I struggled with that, you know, the sense of that I'm not an empty cup. I was kind of criticised by Nishijima Roshi for sniffing his teaching and so on, but actually, that wasn't really a fault of mine. It was it was a fault and a virtue, a strength and a weakness at the same time. But anyway, I'm digressing. The point I was making is that the three branches of the path which are classed as prajñā is samyak smriti, right thinking, thinking straight, and samyak vitarka. So samyak smriti is samyak drishti is seeing straight in light of emptiness. The wisdom of emptiness is like a torch or like a light. It helps us see straight. And then thinking straight, samyak vitarka. So thinking straight corresponds to what I call sending the knees forwards and away. And then there's this right, samyak parikrama, right initiative, right effort. And that effort is as an individual. Nobody can get inside your brain and do the work for you, as F.M. Alexander said. So there's an effort of understanding that every person has to do for himself. Then in samadhi, there are two branches of the path in samadhi are samyak smriti, right remembering what you want to happen, right remembering. You could translate samyak smriti, right thinking again, but samyak vitarka is right thinking. So samyak smriti, right remembering, right mindfulness as it's usually translated. So remembering truly what really happened, what you want, what you really want to happen. Samyak smriti, it has to be real. Really remembering what you really want to happen. And then samyak samādhi, sitting in true balanced stillness. So, speaking of samadhi, in the next verse we have the phrase atyanta shivam padam, the state which is the step or the stage, pada, which is atyanta shivam, exceeding happiness or total well-being. And for me, that resonates with Master Dogen's words, description of samadhi as the samadhi which is king of samadhis, which he spoke of puruṣasya, not leaving the temple grounds, not leaving the forest, puruṣasya. And that also, in the verse I'm going to go through, I think it relates to not going out, no fondness for going out into the world. So there's these resonances with Master Dogen's description of samadhi, king of samadhis. So we'll get to those now. Triskandam etam pravigaya margam. Triskandam etam. This with three divisions, triskanda, with three parts, three divisions, three components. Margam, path. Etam margam, this path. Triskandam, this path of three divisions. Pravigaya, the sense of diving in, like we talked about the Buddha crossing over the ocean of harm, which is unfordable. You can't walk through it with your feet on the ground. You have to dive in or launch into it. You have to give yourself to it. There's a nice thing I saw on the internet of I think it's a New Zealand lady who'd taken care of a penguin, rescued a penguin, and she puts the penguin into the close to the waves, and the penguin sort of approaches the waves and then turns around and looks back at the lady, and then turns back and look at the waves and turns back and look at the lady, and finally dives into the sea. Pravigaya, it gives itself to the sea because of its penguin instinct overriding its kind of instinct to stay with the woman who looked after him. And actually, it made me chuckle when I saw that video, because it just absolutely resonates with Asvaghosha's description of Nanda, who's struggling to leave his wife Sundari. Asvagho, you must have recognised that behaviour in the bird world, and so he described Nanda as being like a king goose. Being unable to make up its mind whether to, pushing against the waves. So Triskandam pravigaya margam. Again, it's upajati mita. Gaya margam. Praspashtam ashtangam aharyam aryam. I find that line extremely poetic for some reason. Praspashtam, straightforward. Ashtangam, 8, ashta 8, anga, branches, limbs. Aharyam, hur means to take away, so haryam, to be taken away, aharyam, not to be taken away, irremovable. See, the ignobles cannot stop us from practicing it. That's how it relates to our present situation. Everybody can practice this noble path. Someone like me, I don't tend to think of myself as being noble. I was reflecting that as I woke up with the intention to do a noble thing this morning, having had a good sleep. I thought, I'm going to do a noble thing. I'm going to clarify the meaning of the noble path. But who am I? I'm, to aspire to do a noble thing. But that kind of doubt should be consigned to the dustbin, because everybody, the Buddha opened the gate for everybody to walk through and enter the noble path, to enter the noble stream leading to nirvana. So Aryam, Aryan, noble. Aharyam, Aryam. So these words ending in M all describe margam, the path. Praspashtam, straightforward. Ashtangam, 8 branched. Aharyam, they can't take it away from us. Aryam, noble, Aryan. Giving oneself to this path with its 3 divisions and 8 branches, this straightforward, irremovable, noble path. Doṣāsya hetun prajahati doṣān. One abandons the harms which are the causes of suffering. Doṣāsya, of suffering. Hetun, causes. Doṣān, harms. Hetun doṣān, the harms as causes. Prajahati, one abandons, one leaves behind, one gives up. One abandons the harms which are the causes of suffering. Okay, so the noble undertaking for people is to tell people who practice Zazen, like my friend who expressed a doubt about what's the sameness or difference between Zazen and bhāvana. There's no difference ultimately. When we practice Zazen in light of emptiness, Zazen is bhāvana. Zazen is letting happen. And by that means bhāvana, so prajñā bhāvana eri tena. Again, that's upajjhātimita, another verse. Prajñā bhāvana eri tena, dum da da dum, no, dum da dum dum, eri tena. Prajñā bhāvana eri tena. Prajñā, understanding. Asina, with the sword of understanding. Iritena, moved. Bhavanaya, by bhāvana, with the sword of understanding wielded by bhāvana. That's what Zazen should be about. Wielding the sword of wisdom, cutting the fetters that stop us from being free. Bhavanaya, instrumental feminine, by the practice of letting happen. So it's not that there's this old traditional interpretation of the Four Noble Truths and then the Zazen, which is to be understood in light of the new and improved version of the Four Noble Truths, which is 3 philosophies and 1 reality. No. That creates a kind of a gap between the so-called traditional interpretation of the Noble Truths, as Nishijima Roshi described it, and then this other thing called Zazen. No. These 5 verses are absolutely clarifying that the purpose of Zazen is the purpose of the Four Noble Truths, which is to free the mind from faults in light of emptiness. To free the mind, to drop off the non-empty conception of mind, and on those grounds to calm the mind, which is samādhi, and to direct the mind freely, which is prajñā, understanding. So when we understand this, there's nothing to doubt about Zazen and bhāvana. If we've got a doubt, then just forget everything you've understood about Zazen. This is what my experience when I recite these verses of Asvaghosha is. I don't have any doubt that I'm on the same page as Asvaghosha, and through him the same page as the Buddha, and also on the same page of monks in the Theravada tradition who understand the Pali Suttas. But they again tend not to have studied emptiness as clearly as Nagarjuna and Asvaghosha would have us studied. So, 4th line, pratanoti chatyanta śīlaṁ padam tat śīlaṁ padam tat dum da dum dum śīlaṁ padam tat. Pratanoti, they attain. He attains. One attains. One comes to. One attains. Cha, and one attains. Atyanta, exceedingly, totally. Śīlaṁ, well-being, happiness. Padam, step, stage. Tat, that. So one abandons the harms which are the causes of suffering and comes to that step which is total well-being. So in my own practice, I've been reciting these verses in connection with the 8 thoughts of a great person. So sometimes I like to go through the eight thoughts of a great person and recite Sanskrit verses that I've memorized in connection with any one of the eight thoughts. And so when I come to pratanoti chatyanta shivam padam tat, and comes to that step which is total well-being, I think of nishprapancha, which Nagarjuna described as prapanchopashamam shivam, the happiness, the well-being of ceasing prapancha, giving prapancha a rest. So, pratanoti chatyanta shivam padam tat. One comes to that step which is total well-being. In light of emptiness, it means just abiding in emptiness, not othering anything. Nishprapancha. So speaking of the eight thoughts like that, these 5 verses, for me, the eight thoughts. See, I've been attracted to these 5 verses for 15 years because I was so much pushed by the eight thoughts. And when I came to Asvaghosha's poetry, the first thing I did was look for discussion in them of the eight thoughts. And so in the next verse we have the word alpechata tushtir, so wanting little and contentment. So that was a signal that these verses are related with the eight thoughts. Well, of course, śīla, samādhi and prajñā, you've got 2 of the eight thoughts in samādhi and prajñā, right there, number 6 and number 7. And number 8, nishprapancha, for me is there in pratanoti chatyanta shivam padam tat. Pratanoti chatyanta shivam padam tat. So that's nishprapancha, the step which is total well-being. So what of the previous 5 of the eight thoughts? So that's where we come to the next verse. Asyopachare dirtir arjavam cha. Asyopachare, asya, of it, so of that path. Upachare, attendant. Upachara means to wait on, to attend on. So attendance on it. Dirtir, constancy. Dirty means constantly or firmness or grit. Look, if you want a word that kind of sounds like dirty, grit. But in the eight thoughts, of course, virya. So in a way, it's interesting that I think Asvaghosha he's definitely thinking about the eight thoughts in this series of verses, but he uses other words, may have been to fit the meter, but also I think it encourages to think. So dirtir, constancy, is another word for vidya. Arjavam cha. Arjavam means upright. So when the Buddha said ujum kayam panidaya parimukam satim upatapetva, so directing the body up, having established thinking to the fore. Ujum means tending upright. And arjavam is the same word. Ujum and arjavam are the same root. So straightness or uprightness. Asyopachare dirtir arjavam cha. That cha is long because the next word is hrir, double consonant, which means humility or modesty, which kind of goes with the alpechata, wanting little. Hrir apramadaha praviviktaḥ cha. Hrir, humility. Apramada means not pramada. And pramada means like an elephant in rut, like intoxicated, over exuberant, lusty. And so not being like that. Apramada is usually translated as attentive. But again, so if we think of it as being attentive, it means the same as smriti, vigilant. So again, for me, this goes with thought number 5, which in Sanskrit, smriti, in Pali, sati, in the Chinese translation, fu bo nen, not forgetting, remembering. Then praviviktaṭa is, of course, the third of the 8 thoughts, separateness. I translated it reclusiveness, but I'm going to change that to separateness. So attendant on the eightfold path, are constancy and straightness, humility, attentiveness, and separateness. Alpechata tushtir asamgata cha. Alpechata, wanting little. So, first of the 8 thoughts. Tushtir, or samtushti, is contentment, satisfaction. Asangata cha. So, this is related to what I was talking about, not being clubbable. Asamgata means, so asanga, it makes me think again of the group thinking little bunch of trivial self-promoting Dharma heirs that surrounded themselves with around Nishijima Roshi and effectively stole the Shobogenzo project from the people who had put the work in. I shan't name names, but except maybe I'll point the finger at James Cohen, who I think was really a kind of agent provocateur in the whole thing. In his case, I think it was not only ignorance of emptiness. It was worse than ignorance. I think he had a kind of malevolent intention to mess everything up. We can't know people's intention directly, but as Jesus said, and I think he got it from the Buddha, you shall know them by their fruits. You shall know their intentions by their fruits. I'm talking about James Cohen now. The fruits of his effort is to stand up and be counted as a promoter of the vaccine, promoting the jabs. Disgusting behaviour. I shouldn't call him a scumbag because that would be othering. So I just say his behaviour has been utterly disgusting. Somewhat reminiscent of the so-called monks in China who Master Dogen said they were greedy to consume the shit and piss of lay people. James Cohen is the modern equivalent of, and how Nishijima Roshi didn't have the eyes to see what he was being confronted with. But that arse-licking piece of shit. I shouldn't call him that. No, that's prapancha. Because redemption is possible, even for the likes of James Cohen. In light of emptiness, even James Cohen could enter the gate that the Buddha opened to walk the noble path. But let none of us hold our breath. It really requires a kind of miracle for him to turn things around. I think he's an agent of the deep state, actually. He's an agent of the ignobles. I digress. Asangata, not being clubbable. Not, you see, being an arse-licker towards the Zen master who you want to give you the ceremony to become a monk, even though you're married with a family, which is farcical. Being that kind of arse-licker is the meaning of samgata, wanting to sort of inveigle yourself into a network, like the Zen, what was it, the Zen Buddhist Masters of America or some utter bullshit. You know, Cohen made a big fuss of he was entitled to get into that club. Pathetic. Zen Buddhist Masters of America. Pathetic. So, asamgata means you don't enter. You're not interested in joining that kind of club. Okay? It's related, of course, with praviveka, separateness. Also related with nishprapancha, not turning things into objects, including oneself. Asangata, freedom from forming attachments, I've translated it. Asangata. Alpechata tushtir asangata cha, asangata cha. Wanting little, contentment, and freedom from forming attachments. See, when I find myself getting a bit emotional like that, because we care, we lose our back. Now that's one dharma. We can win back. Seeing what happens in a friendly way, just sending the knees forwards and away. For me, sending the knees forwards and away brings me back into my own back, which is wanting little, contentment, and not being eager to join the club. And that sentiment continues. Loka pravriti varati kshamācā. Pravriti means activity, positive activity, or going out. So I translate loka pravriti, going out into the world. Loka means the world. So loka pravriti means going out into the world. It's like James Cohen with his little tree leaf sangha. You know, that's a good example of going out into the world. Wanting to make a name for oneself, use the internet. Arati means discontent or unhappiness. But in here it means no fondness. So no fondness for going out into the world. No fondness for worldly activity. So in terms of the 8 truths again, it's you could think that he's kind of stuck on praviveka, separateness, you know, no freedom from forming attachments, not being clubbable, and no fondness for going out into the world. But the deeper resonance, rather than just separateness, is, I think again, of Master Dogen's Furi Sorin, not leaving the temple grounds, not leaving the forest, which is synonymous with just sitting in full lotus for years, from the beginning to the end of your life, just devoting yourself to sitting in lotus. Kekafuza. So you can think of loka pravrita varati, no fondness for going out into the world, as being part of praviveka, or or part of samādhi, especially the samādhi which is king of samādhis, or again you can think of it as nishprapancha, not othering anything, not being interested in external objects. And then, interestingly, that the very last word is kṣamā, which is somehow cognate with the word earth, the word for earth, but it means forbearance, or as I've translated it, tolerance. So loka pravritāvarati kṣamācha, no fondness for worldly activity and tolerance. And again, tolerance might be related with alpechu samtushti, Master Dogen's comment in Shobogenzo, or no, it wasn't Master Dogen's comment. The alpechu samtushti is described in Shobogenzo as a person who wants little, has yoyu, has allowance, has tolerance. So kṣamā, it's like that, with space and time, not hell-bent, on hard ground, will rest content. It's that sense of space which you get from wanting little and being satisfied. But having said that, in light of emptiness, there's a kind of tolerance, emptiness and tolerance kind of go together, because emptiness is the antidote to seeing things in such a black and white, absolute, fixed way. Nothing is fixed in light of emptiness. So just to recap, the 8 thoughts, alpechu is there, alpechattā. Samtushti is there, tushtir. Praviveka is there in pravivṛttaḥ, but also it resonates with asangata and loka pravritāvarati. No freedom for freedom from forming attachments, and no fondness for going out into the world, and no fondness for worldly activity. Then virya is there in dhartir, constancy, grit. Then smriti is there in apramada, attentiveness. Alpechu, samtushti, praviveka, virya, smriti, samādhi and prajñā are there explicitly in the verses which are devoted to samādhi and prajñā. And then finally, nishprapancha, I think is there in pratanoti chatyanta śīlaṁ padam tat. Pratanoti chatyanta śīlaṁ padam tat. Comes to that step which is total well-being. But also nishprapancha resonates with I think loka pravritāvarati kṣamācha. It's an indirect suggestion of not othering anything, just abiding in emptiness.